Good afternoon. It's Sunday, the 9th of August. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Tensions are still peaking in the West Bank following yesterday's funeral of Saed Dawabshe, who died of injuries that he sustained in the arson attack on his home in the village of Duma 10 days ago. Meanwhile, security forces have carried out additional arrests of suspected Jewish terrorists, two of whom have been placed under administrative detention. IBA's Dennis Zinn reports.
The security forces in Judea and Samaria were placed under even higher alert yesterday following the funeral of Said Dawabshe, who died in an Israeli hospital some 10 days after he was burned in an arson attack on his home in the village of Duma. He was buried next to his 18-month-old son Ali, who was also killed in the blaze. His wife and 4-year-old daughter are still in hospital in serious condition. Hamas flags alongside those of the Fatah party were prominent at the funeral. Hamas leaders in Gaza have called for all-out revenge against Israel, while Fatah leaders and PA chairman Mahmoud Abbas termed the attack an Israeli crime that will be brought before the International Criminal Court at The Hague. Palestinian residents of some villages have begun operating their own night patrols. They said that they want to give their families a feeling of security.
Because a lot of Jews come here and make some problems, burning some houses and everything. We check if they got weapons or, robberies or something.
Meanwhile, Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon ordered the defense forces to tighten their crackdown on rogue Jewish settlers in the West Bank. Shin Bet raids took place in several settlements over the last 24 hours, including the Adei Ad outpost and Chochav HaShachar. 10 people were arrested. Ya'alon also issued administrative detention orders this morning against Mayor Ettinger and Aviatar Slonim, both of whom are suspected ringleaders of a Jewish terror group. More administrative detentions are expected. Dennis Zinn, IBA News.
Dozens of Palestinian security prisoners today joined 120 others in their 5th day of a hunger strike at the Nafha jail in the south of the country. The inmates launched the action in protest against conditions at the facility, as well as in solidarity with fellow detainee Mohammed Alan, who has been hospitalized at the intensive care unit of the Soroka Hospital in Beersheba after refusing to eat for 54 days. The Israel Prison Service has begun conducting disciplinary hearings against the participants amid rising concerns that additional prisoners may also decide to join. Prison and medical officials are considering force-feeding the 31-year-old Alan, who the International Committee of the Red Cross says is at immediate risk of death. United Nations officials yesterday expressed opposition to prisoners being forced to eat against their will, saying that self-deprivation of food is a nonviolent and legitimate method of protest. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is becoming more sectarian than nationalistic. This according to Roni Shaked of the Truman Institute for the Advancement of Peace, who also told IBA's Ari O'Sullivan that the Palestinian Authority is cooperating with Israel and does not want an outbreak of violence.
There is a lot of tension during the last time and during the last month, and especially during the last years, because the conflict became to be more and more, it's become to be a religious conflict and not an ethnic national conflict. And why I'm saying it? Because today there is a lot of clashes between the two communities, the settlers on one hand and the Palestinians on the other hand, and the clash is on religious items.
There have been calls for revenge. Could that be taken out against the Jewish settlers or against all of Israel?
The Palestinians became to be much smarter than we think. They know that after the second Intifada, they had a lot of damages and a lot of losses, a lot of bad things in their society. Therefore, today they are talking just about the settlers, not about Israel. And we can see it not just in the speeches of the leaders, but also Fatah people who are talking today about building like some kind of militias in every village in order to prevent the settlers and in order to attack the settlers, not the Jewish people.
On the other hand, is there security cooperation going on between the Palestinian Authority and the Israeli Defense Forces?
not just as a cooperation, but a very good cooperation. And we have to be honest and to say that without the cooperation, there would be a lot of problems to the settlers themselves. Because if we are talking that just in July, 300 Hamas people were arrested by the Palestinian authorities in the West Bank. More than the Israeli Shin Bet arrested during in the last half year. And Abu Mazen himself, he said, I don't want to say in a loud voice, but we prevent a lot of incidents during the last month.
So now the Israeli authorities have cracked down on some Jewish people as well, and they've put a number in administrative detention, and they've arrested 7 more this morning. Are they doing enough?
No, they are not doing enough, because if they arrested now people, it means that the information was in the hand of the Israeli Security Service also several months ago or before. I don't know, I read some articles during the last the weekend. There was a lot of information about all those people and all those suspected people. I'm sure that also the Prime Minister knew this information. Why they just now arresting them? Why? After what's happened, it's not going to be the way to fight against terrorism, and especially, as I said, religious terrorism.
It was today released for publication that a Lebanon-born Palestinian who holds Swedish citizenship has been indicted on 3 counts of attempted espionage on behalf of the Hezbollah terror group. Acting on intelligence tips, Khalil Hizran was arrested by the Shin Bet Security Service at the Ben Gurion International Airport on July 21st. The 55-year-old suspect has reportedly confessed to traveling to Tel Aviv for the purpose of gathering information on security operations at the airport, as well as locating military facilities that might be targeted in future conflicts. Security officials say that Hizran has also admitted to having made repeated visits to Lebanon for meetings with Hezbollah since 2009, and that he was additionally tasked with recruiting Israeli Arabs and Palestinians holding foreign passports. In other news, public attacks by former Foreign Minister and Israel Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are becoming severe. In a Facebook post, Lieberman accuses Netanyahu, who also currently serves as the foreign minister, with having made the ministry powerless and thereby endangering national security. He also charged the prime minister with waging a pogrom against the foreign ministry and said that it is unacceptable that power has been divided up between multiple ministers since the 20th Knesset elections. At Lieberman's request, the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee will hold a meeting on Tuesday to discuss the situation at the Foreign Ministry. The ongoing public dispute between Israel and the United States over the Iranian nuclear accord continues unabated. Speaking in an interview with CNN's Fareed Zakaria, U.S. President Barack Obama complained that Israel's intervention in the internal American affairs is unprecedented.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has injected himself forcefully into this debate on American foreign policy in Washington. Can you recall a time when a foreign head of government has done that? Is it appropriate for a foreign head of government to inject himself into an American debate?
Yeah, I'll let you ask Prime Minister Netanyahu that question if he gives you an interview. I don't recall a similar example. Obviously, the relationship between the United States and Israel is deep. It is profound. It's reflected in my policies. But as I said in the speech yesterday, on the substance, the Prime Minister is wrong on this. And I think that I can show that the basic assumptions that he's made are incorrect. If, in fact, my argument is right, that this is the best way for Iran not to get a nuclear weapon, then that's not just good for the United States, that is very good for Israel.
Opposition leader Isaac Herzog said today that there's no difference between himself and Prime Minister Netanyahu when interpreting the threat posed by a nuclear Iran. At the same time, the Zionist Union Party head said that major differences do exist over how to approach the United States regarding that threat. Herzog made the comments this morning after meeting with visiting Democratic congressional representatives.
We have major differences on many topics, and on the Iran issue, I have a difference of approach to Netanyahu's approach as to how to deal with the agreement signed between Iran and the P5+1 headed by the United States, and I will explain. There's no difference between us as to the definition of the threat. And it's true, I've said that the agreement with Iran is a bad agreement. Every Israeli patriot would have been worried about this agreement, and I have a major criticism on some aspects of it. First of all, I believe that unleashing a hungry Iranian tiger into the region from the cage is a risk which may destabilize the region and change its balance of power between moderate nations and extreme nations. In addition, the agreement gives legitimization for Iran for the first time becoming a nuclear threshold state within 10 to 15 years, something that is not recognized at this moment. And it's enough for us to see the positive reactions of President Assad of Syria and Hassan Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah, as to the agreement to understand exactly what I'm talking about. But there is a big but between me and Netanyahu on the following. I have no intention in intervening in American politics. I have no intention of telling you what to vote for. And I have no intention of challenging frontally the White House or the President. I think the relationship between our nations are a key to Israel's national security. And I think that arguments between us and the United States are arguments within the family. And as such, we should set rules of how to manage and how to control this argument and not to cross some lines. Such arguments should not be taken on the balcony in front of all the neighborhood, but rather between ourselves in a frank and open discussion. So at this given moment, I think the role of the constructive role of the leaders within the family on both sides of the ocean is to shift the debate to the Oval Office and see how we deal with containing the risks entailed in the agreement for the better of the region and the world at large.
U.S. Democratic House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer is downplaying fears of deteriorating ties between Jerusalem and Washington. He told Israel Television's Yaakov Achimeir that even though relations between Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Obama administration are unique, bonds between the two countries remain strong.
I've been in the Congress 34 years, and I can't remember one that was any more public or any more animated than this one. And it is because, of course, the stakes on both sides are so very high and the feelings are so intense in terms of the consequences of this agreement being finalized. So that, but we'll get, my point here is that we'll get through this. We'll get through this because the relationship between our two countries is not based upon personal relationships between the Prime Minister and the President. Our relationship is based upon our shared values, our deep commitment to one another, and our critically important alliance with one another in this region of the world. So that it is unique. It's more animated than I've seen in the past, but we'll get through this, and we will get through this as strong friends and allies and supporters of one another.
What is the mood among the Democrats in the House concerning this Iran deal?
Well, I think the mood in the Democrats in the House is that a uniform support for Israel. I think that's the first point I want to make, because there should be no misinterpretation as to whether one is for or against approving this agreement as to the indication that that is any lack of support for Israel. I think America, the Democratic Party, committed to Israel's security and safety and sovereignty and survival.
How the Democrat Party will vote in the House, if you can give us an assessment?
Well, I'm the whip and I count votes, but I'm not counting votes on this one. And I'm not counting votes because what I've asked members to do is to carefully consider what they believe the impact of this agreement will have on the country, on the United States of America, on Israel, and on the relations in the international community. But there is a unanimity of conviction that Iran must not become a nuclear power. As you have seen, there's some members who have come out for approval, and there's some members in my party who have come out against approval. But I think the majority of members are still continuing to look at this very, very carefully.
I've seen the position of Senator Schumer.
Yes. And that will be a very important position. Senator Schumer is perceived to be the next leader of the Democratic Party in the United States Senate, a very influential voice.
If the White House will approve his candidacy for the leadership.
No, we do understand the United States has a separation of powers. We have two independent bodies of government. One is the executive, that's the president.
No, I mean as a political move.
As a political move, I think the president, the Democratic Party, will have a new president, number one. I hope that will be a Democrat. I'm confident it will be a Democrat.
Ms. Clinton?
I think former Secretary Clinton, former Senator Clinton is certainly our leading candidate. I think she would be an excellent president. But whoever is president, the Senate will make its own decision as to who the majority leader is going to be. So it won't be the administration making that decision. I had a long discussion with Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, 2 weeks ago on the phone. He called me and had quite an extended conversation with the Vice President of the United States before I came. And I told both of them that I intended to continue to weigh what I believe would be in the best interests of our country, of Israel and the international community, and make a decision based upon my conclusion as to what that best interest would be.
Police in Turkey are bracing for further disturbances after a second night of violence in two towns close to the country's borders with Syria and Iraq. Supporters of the PKK Kurdish Workers' Party clashed with security forces in the southeast town of Cizre on Saturday as the leader of the pro-Kurdish HDP appealed to the government to launch talks to halt the surge in violence, as well as a conflicting call to the PKK to remove its finger from the trigger. On Friday, a police officer was killed and another wounded when militants fired at their armored car in Cizre, while 3 other people were killed and 7 wounded during clashes between police and the PKK in Silopi. The PKK has announced that it would step up attacks in mid-July after accusing Turkish forces of violating the 2013 ceasefire. In related news, several thousand PKK supporters also demonstrated in Cologne against actions by the Turkish government. The protest was organized by the Democratic Center for Kurds in Germany and joined by more than 40 other organizations. The activists demanded that the Turks end aggression against Kurdistan and accused Ankara of being more focused on stemming Kurdish territorial ambitions than fighting the Islamic State. Turkey began its air campaign against the PKK encampments in northern Iraq on July 24th. Today marks 70 years since the U.S. dropped an atom bomb on Nagasaki that convinced Japanese Emperor Hirohito that surrender was the only option. We get more from Ellen Dorfeva.
The Japanese city of Nagasaki is today commemorating 70 years since being devastated by an atomic bomb by the United States that brought an end to World War II. Representatives of 75 countries, including U.S. Ambassador Caroline Kennedy, gathered for the solemn ceremony. A memorial bell was struck to commemorate one of the most painful days in Japan's history. The people of Nagasaki stood for a minute of silence, bowed their heads, remembering that unforgettable tragedy when their city was destroyed in a blinding, horrific moment. Today, people attending the memorial recited prayers for a better future and that never again would the world experience such massive destruction. On August 1945, 3 days after the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, the United States dropped the second bomb on the industrial port city of Nagasaki. It was chosen because the original target, Kokura, was obscured by clouds. The explosion went off about 300 meters above the ground and totally destroyed an area of about 1.6 kilometers in radius from the hypocenter. More than 150,000 died in the attack and from the subsequent radiation sickness. Japan surrendered 6 days after the Nagasaki attack, ending World War II. At the memorial, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said he was renewing his vows to push more nuclear disarmament, and that sentiment was echoed by a UN representative.
Nagasaki must be the last. We cannot allow any future use of nuclear weapons. Their humanitarian consequences are too great. I wholeheartedly join you in sounding a global rallying cry, no more Nagasaki's, no more Hiroshima's.
Along with official events, a local artist decided to involve younger audience in commemorating the day. He projected on the building of Urakami Cathedral a 10-minute-long clip depicting the dropping of the atomic bomb, a mushroom cloud, and the reconstruction of the church. This is Ellen Zarafeva for IBA News.
Now turning to the weather here at home, and the scorching heat wave claimed its second victim yesterday when an 18-month-old died of complications after suffering a heat stroke during a family trip to the Hula Valley several days ago. She was rushed to the Ziv Medical Center in Sfat at the time with symptoms of dehydration and a fever of over 42 Celsius. Her death was determined to have been caused by multiple organ failure. Earlier in the week, an 18-year-old IDF private, Dan Sela Vafula, also died of heat stroke while taking part in a tour with his unit in Jerusalem's Old City. In local finance, with no currency trading on Sundays, the shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week in the red column. Here's a look at the afternoon numbers. Now taking a look at the forecast, and the IBA weather team has good news for us. We're finally going to get a little relief from the heat wave with a drop in temperatures tomorrow to levels that are more seasonable for this time of year. Here's the forecast home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow, and I'll be back at the same time, same channel to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.